Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special business meeting for Tuesday, March 25th. Holland Squallen, Clis Tuktumut, Clas Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have any concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Council, I'd like to amend the agenda to include an additional item, which is an adjustment to the acting mayor's schedule. So if I could have some, which we'll deal with as item 4. So if I could have someone move adoption of the amended agenda, that'd be great. Moved by Councillor Greenlaw, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So our first item is item 3, staff reports, which is a 2024 year end or the Q4 financial report. I'll pass it over to staff to take us through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the District. I'm joined here today by Laura Turner, Director of Financial Planning and Reporting. We are also joined by the budget managers who will assist with answering Council's project-specific questions. The goal of the presentation today is to present the year-end financial report, which is also referred to as the Q4 report. I recommend to Council first 3 readings of the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan bylaw carry forward amendment. The presentation focuses on 3 core areas of the budget: special projects, capital projects, and operations. To note, the financial results are preliminary and the final results will be presented in May after the year-end audit is complete. Special projects and capital projects have been grouped into 4 categories. Annual projects are required for ongoing infrastructure maintenance. These projects are to some extent non-discretionary, as failure to provide for this work could lead to failure of critical district infrastructure. To note, some of these projects are extensive and span multiple years. Carry forwards may be expected for these projects. Single-year projects are one-time, 1-year projects expected to begin and be completed in the year. Carry forwards are not generally anticipated for these projects. However, they may occur for various reasons. Multi-year projects are multi-phased, and therefore budgets are often established across the fiscal years using high-level and preliminary general estimates, and may shift once the estimates progress from Class D through Class A to tender award. There will always be movement between fiscal periods regardless of progression. Carry forwards are expected annually for these projects. Finally, grant-dependent projects only proceed if the grant funds are awarded. In the appendices of the report, each project was assigned a status of complete, in progress, delayed, or canceled. For the benefit of the community members that may be joining us to review quarterly results for the first time, I'll explain the definition of a delayed project. A project is considered delayed if the work that was planned to be completed in 2024 was not completed and therefore will be completed in a future year. Common themes for externally driven delays and cancellations are delays in receiving other levels of government permitting, projects that are grant dependent and the grant is not awarded, and consultant or contractor availability. In many cases, district staff have made the decision to delay or cancel projects due to a number of reasons, such as a grant opportunity has become available, which in turn, if the district's application is successful, will reduce the cost of the project to the district. Synergies with other projects have been identified, which enables both a better end result and/or reduces costs. And pivoting to high priority community initiatives such as the Chikai rezoning. It's important to note that each project that was delayed or canceled has its own unique reason for the delay or cancellation. These are detailed in the appendices of the report. There are 85 special projects with a total budget of 12.9 million for 2024 in the approved financial plan. Of the 85 projects, 21 are completed, 9 are in progress, 13 have been canceled, and 42 have been delayed. Of the 55 canceled or delayed projects, 32 projects were categorized as single-year projects or multi-year to be completed in 2024, and therefore anticipated to be completed in 2024. However, due to the specific reasons outlined in Appendix 1 of the report, have been canceled or delayed. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Turner to review the special project budget carry forwards.
Great, thank you. So first of all, based on the results in the year-end financial report, amendment to the 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw is required to include the budgets for projects in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan that are still in progress. The bylaw amendment, as included in the report to council, addresses carry forwards only. If any other budget amendments become necessary, such as addressing inflationary cost pressures or changes in project scope, those changes will be brought to council as part of a separate spring amendment. It's also important to note that the carry forward projects are fully funded in the 24 to 28 financial plan, and therefore carrying them forward has no impact on the 2025 taxation levels. For special operating projects, budgets carried forward into 2025 total 4.6 million and includes 1.1 million for single-year projects, 2.1 million for multi-year projects, including real estate and facilities master plan pre-development, landfill expansion pre-design and permitting, and WLNG Fortis BC projects, and 1.4 million for other externally dependent projects, including the Housing Accelerator Fund projects.
There are 130 capital projects with a total budget of 132 million for 2024 in the approved financial plan. The 5 largest projects make up 53% of the budget. Of the 130 planned projects, 40 are complete, 10 are in progress, 6 are canceled, and 74 are delayed. Of the 80 canceled or delayed projects, 41 projects were categorized as single-year or multi-year to be completed in 2024. However, due to specific reasons outlined in Appendix 2, have been delayed or canceled versus completed in 2024. To note, of the 40 completed projects, there was a cumulative budget savings of $1 million, which is primarily the result of not needing to fully spend project contingencies. As detailed in the previous slide, 5 projects make up 53% of the total 2024 capital project budget, and therefore I'm highlighting the status of each. Starting with the new public works facility, the project timeline was reestablished in 2024, and the project is well underway. The expected completion date for the project is April 2026. The Winniag Park Sea Dike project has now received all levels of government permitting that were required to begin construction. The procurement activities are underway, and the expected completion date is March 2026. The wastewater treatment plant upsize major construction activities are scheduled to complete in Q2 of 2025. Site restoration and minor construction activities are planned for completion in Q4 of 2025. The Brennan Park Revitalization GICB grant-funded project is a multi-year project, and construction is scheduled into early 2026. The Brennan Park Revitalization Clean BC grant-funded project has been purposely paused to ensure coordination with the GICB grant work. Construction is anticipated to start in early 2026. I'd also like to highlight that Fire Hall number 2 was completed in 2024 and is now operational. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Turner to review the capital project budget carry forwards.
Thanks. For capital projects, budgets carried forward total 83.7 million, including 2.8 million for annual projects such as active transportation improvements and wastewater system repairs and replacements, 51.9 million for multi-year projects, including the new public works facility, Winniag Park Sea Dike, and wastewater treatment plant upgrades. 21.8 million for externally dependent projects such as the Brennan Park Rec Center revitalization and Squamish River Dike raising, and 7.2 million for single-year projects, including lift station reconstruction and Crescent lift station replacement.
In prior years, operational revenues and expenditures were presented in the quarterly variance report to Council. Staff will continue to present operational expenditures. However, at this time, staff are not in a position to present operating revenues. A new revenue accounting standard was required to be implemented in 2024, and therefore staff are waiting until after the year-end audit to present the revenue results. The annual operating expenditures budget in 2024 is 86.8 million. The expenditures incurred from January 1st to December 31st, 2024 total 78 million, which is 90% of the annual budget. The 9 million variance is primarily due to special projects, or 7.7 million less than budgeted. Debt servicing interest is 700,000 less than budget due to delays in capital projects, which delays debt issuance, and savings due to leveraging internal working capital versus issuing short-term debt. And the remaining variance is primarily due to salary savings due to staffing vacancies. This concludes the presentation. I'll now turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I just wanted to point out, we have Councillor Hamilton joining us remotely. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. I just wanted to point that out to everyone in the room. And then, Council, I will open it up to questions. Who would like to kick us off here? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks for the presentation and the Q4 update. Can you just clarify, so where projects have been delayed or canceled and they're not requesting a carry forward, what happens to that money? So as an example, there's the wastewater treatment plant master plan that's been canceled for the time being, but proposed to come back in 2026. Does that money go to the wastewater reserve fund?
Do you want to answer that?
Sure. So if it's budgeted to be funded from a reserve, that amount will just remain in the reserve and it won't end up being used to fund it, but it will if it's budgeted for a future year, then that money will still be earmarked within the reserve to fund the project.
Even if they're not specifically requesting a carry forward?
If they, oh yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for the question. Heather Boxer, General Manager of Finance, IT and Procurement Services. Thank you for the question. So if it's earmarked as a carry forward, it will actually come over from the 2024 plan into the 25 plan. If it's earmarked in a future plan, what Ms. Turner is alluding to is that it will be earmarked within the reserve continuity schedule. So it's still in that financial plan and we have set aside funds for it.
Thank you. And then appreciate the preamble that this is strictly on moving the money forward so that the projects can carry out, and that there's a forthcoming spring amendment. But I am curious, there are a number of big projects that are carrying forward that will likely be impacted in particular by potential risks for tariffs, for example. So the fire pumper truck, the wastewater treatment plant. I'm just curious how staff are proposing to manage those costs and uncertainties at this time as we carry those projects forward.
Thank you for the question through the chair. So I have a number of notes around the tariffs that I can explain in general because I do understand that that is a hot topic at this point. And so this speaks to all elements of the financial plan. So staff have been engaging and monitoring the various resources available to local governments at this time. Which include the GFOABC, has a group forum. There's messages from the Bank of Canada, obviously. Hearing from Civic Info is that they are organizing a forum as well. And then staff monitoring organizations such as FCM, UBCM, and the province, et cetera. As well as the Procurement Law Office has weighed in a significant amount. And Mr. Milley is on the line if council has any questions in that regard. What we are hearing from the various bodies in conversations that there is an overwhelming message that municipalities should not make changes in haste. It's still a great deal of uncertainty around the impacts to local governments generally, should the tariffs actually become a reality. Tariffs are a concern, there's no doubt, but the potential impacts are not dissimilar to what we've seen over the last several years with regards to post-COVID impacts, having to navigate spikes associated with various material types, such as steel and lumber, supplier availability driving up costs. And then obviously there's a Canadian dollar fluctuations that many organizations are managing. Another message that has been quite strong is that operating costs are not anticipated to go up in the short term. So this is addressing both operating and capital in some respects, but the capital should be assessed on a case-by-case basis. It's not a direct line to, still going up, and there will be impacts immediately. Generally speaking, just in terms of how tariffs work, they're complex, that they're applied to goods that cross a border more than once. So every time a good will cross a border, it will be applied. So it is a long time running that we will see impacts should they come to fruition. So the guidance from all resources is to not implement, as I mentioned, changes in haste. Should the tariff threats become a reality, then the recommendation is to take time and carefully analyze the impacts to the supply chain and procurement procedures. Monitor the situation as new information comes out, monitoring information from Bank of Canada, from GFOA, a number of other resources, FCM, Civic Info, as I mentioned, and then provide opportunities to amend procurement policies and financial plans deemed necessary, but again, not in haste. And there's a great deal of analysis that's needed to support those changes. I did want to mention a few things that possibly council is hearing from other local governments because there is a lot of discussion around this topic. So some municipalities are looking at creating blanket contingency increases to their projects across all projects to hedge against the possible tariffs. Again, however, the district, so again, not in haste, this isn't something that should be done without further analysis. The district has really strong procurement policies and procedures in place, which competes projects on a case-by-case basis. And we proof our contracts on a case-by-case basis as well, utilizing industry standard contingencies. So blanket contingencies could be problematic and could send the market mixed messages and could expose the district unnecessarily to cost escalations on projects. Generally speaking, blanket contingencies are not considered to serve the district at this time. Some municipalities are attempting to navigate the buy Canadian or buy local discussion around procurement policies, which has been thought to be fraught with complexity as organizations in Canada and the US are deeply interwoven. So there are significant risks around unintentionally harming Canadian or local businesses without that further analysis and understanding the complexities there. As well, local governments are subject to trade agreement regulations to navigate, which requires us to consider organizations within the European Union under certain thresholds in the Western provincial agreements as well under the NWPTA. So at this time, to answer your question more generally, or perhaps specifically, given the significant uncertainty and complexity around tariffs, staff are not in a position to recommend any changes to any procurement policies, nor the financial plan at this point. Staff will continue to monitor and follow the bouncing ball as this evolves and the discussions evolve across countries. And then staff will continue to provide council with updates as we know more and as the discussion evolves. And then certainly, should it be necessary, we'll provide the opportunity to make changes to procurement policies if needed and the district's financial plan, either through the amendment or later on in the 2026 to 2035 financial plan or even beyond that. So hopefully that answers your question. It's not specific to the fire truck per se, but it's the general speaking to the financial plan and procurement policies.
Thank you for the very fulsome response to very much a moving target, and appreciate the due diligence that's being done there. So thanks for addressing that. One of my other questions, just to shift gears a little bit, was that there seems to be a shift to not actually establishing a downtown park satellite hub office. And as a result, a number of the capital items are not being procured. And so I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that decision and the impact from a budget and operations perspective.
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Jody Barron, Manager of Public Works Operations. So currently we needed to switch gears for the equipment that we're procuring for the downtown division. We don't have a location earmarked for us any longer. So we're having to look at the equipment that we need to maintain this area of town. At this point, we're not looking at adding any budget. We'll have to restructure the budget that we have to buy the equipment that is needed.
Thank you for that. Council, other questions? Councillor French, then Pettingill.
Thanks, Mayor Harford. The special projects item titled Public Art Maintenance has a carryover amount of just over $21,000. And the note indicates a maintenance plan was created and subsequent funding was provided through Squamish Arts, resulting in cost savings in 2024. I want to better understand how art maintenance works. Is there a 2025 maintenance budget scheduled for the year that we're in now? Well, Mr. Deo is making his way. I think that the answer to that is yes. So I'll just go to my next question, which is, who's doing the actual work? Is it district staff or others not employed by the district?
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, Jay Deo, Director of Recreation and Culture. So the budget that's carried over, there was a work done with a consultant last year to develop a public art maintenance plan. The work was scoped last year in terms of what are the needs. Not all of the budget was used, so we requested a carry forward to start doing some of that work this year. The work is done in different ways. Learning through this process, sometimes it's done directly with the artist. Sometimes it's done, externally through a procurement policy, depending on the value. Sometimes it's done by district staff. So we're in the infancy of developing this plan. This is new for the district. So we're determining who's best to do the different work required for the different items.
Okay, great. So we've got this carryover from last year, and does that carryover meld in with 2025 budget? Was already in plans?
Yes, I believe yes, it does carry over into the 2025 budget. The plan isn't fully developed yet, so we just know there is, the need for that funding to support the work that needs to be done. So that work is ongoing. So we wanted to make sure we had that budget to support that work.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Mayor, I also wanted to ask about the planning department front desk renovation project. According to the notes, hazardous materials were discovered on site. So the project scope for the project was reduced. And I'm wondering, is the site referred to in the note, the area just on the other side of this wall? And was the what was the hazardous material? What are in these walls that's so concerning?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair. I'm Warren Jaggers, Manager of Facilities. We had a report done at all of our sites, or the majority of the older sites, identifying hazardous materials. This building in particular does have asbestos, lead paint in various areas. So there was I think at the time, we tried to reduce the scope of that project to not need any remediation efforts to help that project move forward.
Okay, that makes sense. And Mayor, just one follow-up on this. What impact does this have on the planned $30,000 improvements to the public washrooms here? Will we see the scope of that change as well, or delayed or canceled?
Yeah, we don't have a plan at this point. The scope hasn't fully been developed. I think we still need to reassess that project and see what we're going to do with that one. And yes, that is a big component of the project, is how we deal with the hazardous materials.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. I have a very specific and a quite general question. So the specific one on page 25, it speaks about a new garbage truck as part of our fleet procurement. And I vaguely recall that we spoke about this, but I can't remember. And I'm wondering why, given our GFL contract, we would have bought a garbage truck.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. This garbage truck was specifically meant for street side curb removal. So the bins that you see on Cleveland Ave and in all our parks. So it was, it's got a bit of a compactor on it so we can fit more garbage into the truck and safer for staff to remove the bins as well.
And that's something then that we do, and GFL does not provide that service.
Yeah, no, sorry, that is done by roads and drainage staff in Public Works.
Okay, thank you. The other, I guess, more broad question is, it seems like there's a lot more delayed projects than I recall, and I would intuitively expect that it would have meant more capacity this year if we couldn't do things for various reasons, and or the scope of some of these projects was bigger than we originally thought, so we didn't actually have that additional capacity. And then going into future years, I would expect that this is going to have a knock-on effect. So I'm just wondering how we're sort of managing this. Are there projects that we need to realistically pull off, 25, 2026 and so on, or how are we thinking about this? Is this already built in and staff have already worked through this, or just wondering if you can help me wrap my head around this?
We have Ms. Glenday for a reply.
Excuse me. Thank you, through the mayor. CAO Glenday. Appreciate the question. Absolutely. When we look at what is carry forward or not completed, it can seem alarming. Every year we get better at matching our projected capacity with special projects. It is a challenge. It's not an exact science given external factors, government grants, and staff attrition, vacancy. There are a number, as you see in the report, reasons why. Have we completely nailed it? No, definitely not. I would say to council that we are continuing to work with our budget managers on getting better at projecting what is possible. And frankly, you have a room full of very ambitious people in the room, a growing community, and an ambitious strategic plan, as well as a lot of infrastructure that needs upgrading. In terms of not doing the projects, freeing up capacity, it's actually the opposite. What happens is we find we don't have the capacity to complete what we had planned to. And again, whether that's staff absences or other delays in projects or competing priorities. We talked about the Chikai Fan debris flow barrier as a very important project that happened in 2024 that did get in the way of a number of other things. Going forward, absolutely, when there is carry forward, staff don't look at having a blank slate into future years. They know that those, you only plan for, now your capacity is even less going forward because you've got these carry forwards. And we are actually getting into that in the next couple of weeks with our budget managers around what can we do to be better at planning. And we also, one of our general managers actually pointed out to us all that when you have canceled projects, those are actually, in a way, a celebration. Even, we're not taxing for these projects, so financially it's not an impact. Reputationally, absolutely, because we're saying we're going to do something and then we don't get it done. But if staff at the outset or partway through the year have to cancel a project, that's a good thing, because now what we're doing is real time saying, okay, as we look at what we're doing, we can't get this done. We have to pull it back. And we want to actually celebrate that and not punish people, because we want to continue to get better at saying more realistically what we can get done. Thank you.
Okay,
A follow-up?
thank you. Yeah, does that mean then, should we expect as we go into the next budget process, some of what we've seen so far in the financial plan will be somewhat, maybe even significantly adjusted in terms of what year we plan to do things, and stuff will shuffle forward?
Through the mayor, yes, very likely that will happen.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Just to pick up on that, does that happen for the 26 to 30-30 financial plan, or will that happen in the spring amendment, given that there's some pretty substantive projects that are being carried forward in some departments?
I can speak to the 2026 to 2031, doing the simple math. 35, right? Because we're planning for 10 years. Absolutely, it will happen for that. We are in the midst right now of working on the spring amendment, and likely there will be shifts, but I can't guarantee. Perhaps our CFO can speak more to the spring amendment specifically.
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. No spoiler alerts yet. Certainly staff are looking through a realistic lens on what they can achieve. We're not anticipating major changes at this point. It doesn't serve us, as Ms. Glenday mentioned, to really necessarily remove things if they are funded by reserve, because there is always the possibility that we can start something. So that is the lens in which staff will be looking at. But certainly if there's a major shift that is just, we know now, we will absolutely make a change in the spring amendment.
Okay, additional questions? Yep, Councillor Hamilton, and then I'll go to Anderson.
Hi there. Thanks. Just looking for my unmute button. Sort of following on from this the conversation about planning projects, estimating how long they'll take, and then implementing them. Something that caught my eye was $83 million in carryover for capital projects. And I know capital projects are difficult to plan. And I wonder if, and in an effort to continuously grow, I wonder if we need to strategically think about how we might change our planning processes. So I was to better estimate and better forecast our projects. For example, there's lots of forecasting methods out there. Reference class forecasting is one that's coming into greater popularity these days. Does staff have an idea on what we can possibly change to better forecast our capital projects timing and budget?
I'll go to CAO Glenday.
Thank you for the question. As mentioned, every year we work to get better at this. And in the coming weeks, we are getting together with our budget managers and testing out new systems and collaboration to learn from the past and do better in the future. And once we've completed that, we can provide that update to council. Thank you.
Thanks. I look forward to that update. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
I have too many pieces of paper in front of me. My question is pertaining to the No Name Road Park development, and it is delayed, and the reason given is due to a required provincial archaeological impact assessment. This is where the Mamquam River swept through in 1924. This riverbank, which is the setting for the park as I understand it, didn't exist as a riverbank at that time. I wonder if I could have some clarity as to the nature of why this might be required at this location for this project. Thank you.
Through the chair, my name is Elaine Naseby, Parks Planner, and thank you for the question. The No Name Road, North Yards Neighborhood Park, we did do a PFR, a preliminary field reconnaissance study as an archaeological initial study. The recommendation from that was that in consultation with the Squamish Nation representatives to do a AIA. So that's why we are doing it.
Thank you, Ms. Nesby. I look forward to our district archaeological overview assessment being completed. That will give us all better guidance as to where to direct ourselves, and we'll learn as we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, council? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stunner.
Yeah, a few project-specific questions for real estate, Mr. Plum. Sorry to call you up to the table. real estate facilities master plan pre-development work is allocated at 40% spent out with a carry forward. Can you just clarify what has been completed to date under this project, please? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Neil Plum, Director of Real Estate. So actually that real estate pre-development project started in 2023. And there was 3 key components to it. The first component was innovation area exploration to understand the potential for development at the Squamish Business Park on our lands for innovation uses. A civic hub analysis was also part of it. And then the Brennan Park analysis was the third component of it around the rink and the pool. So the innovation area analysis was completed and is off the books, effectively budgeting. The civic hub is largely completed and has mostly been accounted for financially. So the remaining 40% is for the Brennan Park project. And that was to deliver a scope for the pool and the ice rink.
That's super helpful. And then can you also clarify how that fits in with the REFMP land analysis line item as it relates to scoping for affordable housing?
Thank you again. So just to recap, the REFMP land analysis, the first phase of that was focused on affordable housing and understanding how we can utilize district property for affordable housing purposes. So that was part 1 of that was identifying some sites, and then part 2 is doing deeper analysis on those sites to make sure there's no showstoppers, there's no issues there on geotech and environmental. So we've got a few sites we're doing deeper dives on, not prepared to bring those back in this meeting right here, but they'll be coming back to council as those projects advances over the course of the next few months.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, a follow-up question for Mr. Plum on this same matter. I wonder if Crown agency lands would be out of scope for this particular project. We have had encouragement from the provincial government recently to examine Crown agency lands and provincial lands. I think we discussed that about a year ago. I wonder, Mr. Plum, would that be out of scope for this particular project?
Through the chair, no, they wouldn't. We would be looking at them as well. And even some of the lands that we own are still tied back to the Crown in some respects through Crown reverters on title. So we're kind of treating them all. For context, though, there's not a wealth of Crown sites remaining in the community. So there's a few that we're looking at, but they are part of the scope.
Thank you.
Additional questions, council? No, we're here to satisfy. I'm going to go to Councillor Hamilton, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Stoner. Go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. Following up again on major projects. We were, I believe back in November, we had a conversation about public works, and we had decided, if I recall correctly, that there would be a quarterly, we'd bring the major capital projects forward for a quarterly updates. When would we be expecting a quarterly update for public works and any other major projects so that we can understand the status of these, the big 5, our largest capital projects, so we can have a deeper understanding? When would those come forward?
I'll go to Ms. Fengi.
Through the chair, Julie Vengi, General Manager of Corporate Services. The planned date for bringing that report to council is April 22nd.
And just for clarity, that report is just public works, or does it include any of the other major projects, the other large capital projects we're working on? I don't want to use the word major projects. That has another inference here.
Through the chair, that will include the public works project, but it encompasses all key projects that the district is delivering.
Sorry, do you know which you're defining as key? Like where was the threshold?
I think we'll need to wait to see the report to get that, but rather than going down that path now. So I'll go back to Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, my last question was around attachment 5, which is the procurement tender awards. And I do actually really appreciate this attachment for information and transparency, but I do wonder if there's ways that we can make it more meaningful and tie it back to some of our measurement and reporting goals as they relate to our procurement policy. I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that a little bit, because we did update our procurement policy last term to try and be a little bit more explicit. And I think it'd be really interesting to be able to show council and the community some of the impacts that we're having through that procurement policy, not just the weighting that we're using for the environmental and social considerations in our procurement, but what that actually means in terms of dollars spent at the end of the day. So I don't know if that's something that we can consider adding into this attachment or quarterly reporting. Hi, Mr. Milley.
Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, that's something you raise a very good point. We provide you with this report on a quarterly basis. This one happens to represent all of 2024, but we don't do any analysis of the information. So if I understand correctly, you're looking for us to do some analysis and maybe refine some of the measures. We'd be happy to look at that. I certainly couldn't make a promise at this stage, but as a data guy and a numbers guy, I'd be happy to explore that with you and see if we can dig a little deeper and provide you with some more meaningful information.
Yeah, that would be really great if we could just explore it a little bit. And I don't need it to be, it may not be quarterly, that might be too much, or whether our updates in our procurement systems allow us just to kind of pull those numbers, like how many dollars have we actually spent in allocation with consideration of social values, or what does that look like, just so we can give folks a little bit of a sense of what we actually mean and the impact that we're having through social and environmental procurement.
Thank you for thank you for that. I think that would be quite useful, and also maybe that's tied with a review just to see how impactful the policies are doing and if they need adjustment. Any other questions, Council? I'll remind you that we're working towards receiving the report and giving readings to the carry forwards. The carry forwards, I've appreciated the conversation today, and really it's a snapshot in time as to where we are. So as much as we'd like to maybe complete some of these projects that are showing as incomplete or whatever else, those are the decisions that we're being asked today. So any other questions in support of that, given that we've heard about a major, an update coming on our substantive projects, and remains to be seen what'll be covered there. I hope it meets everyone's expectations. We know that there's our spring amendment is coming. Like, there's other pieces to touch. So for today's decision, are there any other questions that anyone would like to have answered to support the decision we need to make? So if not, you're going to move the staff recommendation both together, I think is good. Seconded by Councillor Stoner. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor French?
Yes, I would like to speak to it, Mayor. Thank you. These reports and this session with a packed gallery of big brains and, as our CAA pointed out, ambitious individuals is, I think, an important part of the transparency that we have to deliver to our community. So I appreciate that staff have taken time to be here today and provide thoughtful answers to questions that ranged from very much on the ground in reality right now to super high level strategic questions around the future of some of our biggest projects. So in putting this on the floor, I wanted to just recognize the work that's gone into creating the report and the time and effort put into providing our community with the answers that council are asking.
Thank you. Other comments? I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Stoner, then I'll come to Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Through the chair, happy to support the motion on the floor, and thanks to staff for the update and all the work that's gone on in 2024 and will carry on into 2025. I appreciate the conversation that's been had, and I concur with my council colleague that this is a really important piece for quarterly check-ins, transparency to our community and to council on the work that is ongoing and completed to date. And I also hear our CAO when we say that we should actually be celebrating when we can recognize that some projects do need to be canceled, and whether that's because external funding hasn't come through, the right partners were not at the table, or it just wasn't the right time to be able to move that project forward. I don't want staff to feel like that's a negative thing, and I don't want our community to reflect that negatively, hopefully. And I do also want to recognize that when the numbers push up to over 50% of the projects being canceled or delayed for good reason, that also does have a challenging narrative to it, whether that is around this table, whether that is in community, or I suspect also a little bit around morale in terms of, we said that we were going to do all this and for some reason we're not, and even if that is well justified. And so that's why I am looking to the spring amendment and then to the next financial plan to make sure that we are just consistently scoping accurately our workload, the expectation that we have of the staff, and so that we can set our community up for success as well in terms of what they're expecting to see delivered at the end of the year. These are often light at the beginning of the year and they become more lengthy in process by the Q4 because that's just when we expect more projects to be done. So I think that today was a really appropriate and fulsome conversation, digging into some of the details. One thing that would be really helpful for me for the report going forward would be to identify the project funding sources where possible. So I hear our CFO when she says if it's funded by reserve, then we want to kind of keep it in there. It doesn't really have much implication, but I don't have a clear sense of how much the carry forwards or canceled projects are funded by taxation. So that would be one thing that would be helpful for me going forward. But otherwise, happy to support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. A few comments on individual items in the presentation. Firstly, under capital projects, the Brennan Park Fieldhouse. Good on our staff to identify the opportunity of obtaining a double-wide portable to complement or replace the 55-year-old change rooms at the soccer fields. I've had a couple of cultural groups contact me and sending pictures of this building, very excited, wondering if they could have it. So I suggest we should always be on the lookout for such opportunities because we have a lot of groups in town lacking storage facilities, rehearsal space, exhibit space. So great idea, and let's look for future opportunities to obtain such buildings from developers. There's a few other showrooms around that will be that are in temporary use. Moving on to the marine impact study item. This has been discussed periodically, and its scope seems to be changing and a little bit uncertain. I'd like to suggest we should be very careful about looking at the scope and not being, it says here, staff are planning to reduce the scope to fit available resources. Well, Ms. Boxrud has earlier discussed our trade situation as a country and the tariff situation. Part of that discussion generally is around trade enabling lands and port facilities. Canada needs to diversify. We have two large parcels of port lands, and the federal government and the provincial government, all kinds of channels are discussing such lands. And I think we should take part in that discussion and not overlook the opportunities that are going to come along. The National Trade Corridors Fund is going to be renewed. There's no way that it will not be renewed, and we should be there and ready for it. So that there are funding opportunities that we should be mindful of, looking a little bit broader. And so we shouldn't be leaving money on the table in planning in our harbor. We have facilities needing investment, and we have infrastructure connected to those facilities, namely Loggers Lane and other road infrastructure that needs some help. And so we should be looking more broadly about a ports plan. We haven't had a general ports plan in Squamish since 1991. Two other projects, and I'm going to relate them to our strategic plan, our council strategic plan, namely the Tourism Master Plan, which has been cancelled. I suggest we should be careful about a pattern of lacking attention to core and enabling sectors generally and in our economic development strategy. If we look at what we're doing for those sectors, there's not a lot there in our work plan, and tourism is one of those core and enabling sectors. Then we have the Squamish Planning Land Use Insight Tool. We're using the acronym SIM, the Squamish Insight Model. We had a presentation from Planning Department a few weeks ago. It is quite clear that that model will not be directed towards employment lands or industrial lands, even less, as we might have thought a little while back. And so we should again here be careful that we should not neglect the need for inventory and needs assessment for employment lands and industrial lands. And if we look at the Council Strategic Plan under Section 4.4, we need to be doing more to realize that goal of increasing the amount of terrestrial and marine employment lands. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Just processing the last set of comments, we did just go through our strategic plan review and sort of approved a direction and considered a lot of these things, and not everything could fit. But anyways, I'll chew on that a little bit. Just in terms of the financial plan update and so on, a couple things. One, I would like to echo the comments about understanding the impacts of our social procurement in terms of, you know, what sort of non-financial impacts. It's because we're not just about lowest cost anymore. We're looking to have much broader and more beneficial impacts to our community with our procurement. So understanding those impacts would be really great if we can figure out a way to do that. A small thing, but on a financial plan where we're changing the numbers, and it was less critical this time because it's carry forward, it's not impacting tax, but it would be helpful if it's possible in the future to see a track changes version just to understand where the numbers have shifted, or it would help me at least. Just a gentle request if possible. And the last thing, and I understand why, you know, we're a very ambitious group here at the district and we've taken on a lot and always push. But I do wonder, have we been a bit too ambitious? We also know that 2026 and 2027 in our financial plan is pushing up to taxation levels that we're not used to here. Even if sort of on average we're doing well. And so, you know, these carry forward items won't impact tax, but I understand they will cause capacity constraints, which may impact other projects, which could have tax implications. So I'm very curious to see how this flows out. And do we just, even taxation aside, need to think about what projects we can take on in the coming years, and that may help balance out some of the taxation concerns. I guess that's to be determined, but I'll be watching that closely as we get into the next budgeting process, which is going to be starting much too soon. Thank you.
Thank you for the foreshadowing, Councillor Pettingill. I'm going to go to Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. Yeah, happy to receive this report. I think it's extremely important that we keep we keep open books, basically, that we keep communicating with our community where we're at, where we are doing well, and where we're maybe falling behind our own expectations. And I think that that's seeing the large number of capital projects being delayed and the large capital project carryover. There's two ways to look at that kind of thing. One is that you didn't get done what you expected to do, so you maybe enough. The other way is trying to bite off more than you could chew, or you were for some reason unrealistic about your forecasting. And I think being unrealistic about forecasting is, quite frankly, a very human thing to do. And I hope that I'm looking forward to, I was very happy to hear that staff was looking at how to forecast our budgets and our significant capital projects more effectively. Because I think that that's sometimes you set yourself up for a troubling situation when you look at it, the optimistic side of every forecast and every schedule. And sometimes usually that optimistic side doesn't come out because there's bumps along the road. And I think that that's what we are seeing here, regular bumps along the road causing delays. And I think that we can learn from that and do a better job in forecasting more realistically. So I'm very grateful that staff are actually looking into that. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'm speaking in support of the motion. And I'd just like to thank everyone in the room here that came to support a conversation today, but also that have the responsibility to shepherd these projects through and to establish the budgets that represent both the community goals expressed through council and as well as the capacity that we have to achieve those. So I see a lot to celebrate here and as mentioned earlier in both by CAO Glende and in some comments, you know, I think there's when there's a delay or a cancellation, there's a story behind each one. Some of them are about, do we need to do that? Can we find a more efficient way to do it? Can we combine it with another project? Like, there's all sorts of reasons, and I think they were well articulated throughout the report and varied, as well as these external factors around whether it's grant funding coming or not, or our favorite is, of course, permitting delays by other regulators, which is quite often the case as well. So I really appreciate this, the work also throughout the year, the folks executing this. So it was great to see the procurement list and all the partners that are working hard to execute these projects in the community. I'm happy to support and look forward to future budget discussions coming up in the spring amendment. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So, Council, we have a very simple new item 4 in our amended agenda. And the idea is that we're going to amend the acting mayor schedule to free up Councillor Greenlaw through April. So she'll be switching with Councillor Pettingill in July. This shuffle only affects these two councillors that I've spoken to and have agreed to. So I would propose, I'll move that we make the adopt the amended acting mayor schedule as presented. And I move that. Councillor Pettingill seconds. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Termination. Councillor Stoner, thank you. And Councillor French seconds. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.